America's highly classified RQ-180 is much more than a spy plane. The world was first informed by Aviation Week in December 2013 that the U.S. was covertly developing a sizable stealthy reconnaissance aircraft to replace the void left by the retirement of the SR-71. According to Aviation Week, this aircraft was designed with a heavy emphasis on stealth and long-duration flight, giving Uncle Sam high-flying eyes in the sky over even the most hotly contested battle spaces. However, aside from Bill Sweetman's and Amy Butler's reporting, there was no actual evidence that this aircraft existed until the following year when Air Force Lieutenant General Bob Udo casually confirmed the existence of a highly secretive, high-altitude stealth spy plane with Air Force magazine. With that, the legend of the RQ-10 was born. Let's talk about this aircraft. Earlier this week, a Russian missile strike in Ukraine landed perilously close to the convoy, carrying not just the Ukrainian president, but also the Greek prime minister. And by using ground news, I can see that 114 news outlets have already covered this story, including 11 left-leaning outlets, 15 right-leaning outlets, and 39 centrist ones. And as you can see, left-leaning outlets use very descriptive language in their headlines, using phrases like "very close" or "a blast rocks," referencing this missile strike, whereas some right-leaning outlets were more matter-of-fact in their coverage, highlighting the people who were actually killed in the strike or just relaying the story without any descriptive language at all. Ground News assesses the reliability and bias of each news outlet based on ratings provided by 3 different independent news monitoring organizations. They'll even tell you who's funding a publication. Since Ground News keeps me informed, and I am certain they can assist you as well. Let's begin with some candor. I haven't covered the RQ-10 yet, and for good reason. There aren't many credible sources of information regarding this extremely secretive platform available right now. And I don't like to deal in rumors and conjecture on this channel. I think the rest of the internet does more than enough of that for everyone. But I found that by exploring the context of when this aircraft went into development and what objectives the US military was likely trying to meet, that we can draw some pretty interesting conclusions about what the RQ-10 is, and maybe much more importantly what it could become in the not-too-distant future. These days, the US has a number of publicly disclosed but nonetheless highly secretive aircraft in active development, including a stealth bomber and the B-21 Raider, and at least 2 new stealth fighters in the Air Force's next-generation air dominance, and the Navy's F/A-XX Pro programs, respectively. And while these efforts have all managed to maintain a high level of secrecy despite an outpouring of public attention, it would be a mistake to believe that all of Uncle Sam's most advanced and capable programs receive similar levels of disclosure. Some efforts remain hidden even for years after entering operational service, only occasionally breaching the surface of public awareness for an instant before disappearing again into the depths of covert operations. For example, the stealth Blackhawks that were used in the 2011 mission to kill Osama bin Laden would probably never have been acknowledged, and in fact, they still don't officially exist, even though the raid left the complete tail portion of one of the aircraft that fell behind. The most cutting-edge and sophisticated military technologies on the Earth are represented by these secret programs, and preserving the strategic advantage that comes with their presence requires preserving the full range of their capabilities. A covert stealth Blackhawk is by no means the most cutting-edge classified hardware Uncle Sam has logging hours in the sky today. In fact, there's a solid chance that title actually belongs to the flying wing that we in the public know as the RQ-10. But admittedly, that might not even be its name. This Northrop Grumman source platform is likely the most advanced intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance gathering asset ever to see flight, and based on media reports, has likely been in operational service for years already. But many have posited that this aircraft is far more than a highly secretive spy plane. In fact, it could be the central spoke of America's new approach to air warfare, ruling on high from 70,000 feet as a vast array of next-generation stealth fighters, bombers, drones, and even weapon systems take their cues from and send data back to its high-altitude throne. In other words, while the RQ-10 may be capable of filling the SR-71's shoes, at least in some respects, evidence suggests that this aircraft has a much larger purpose in mind. But to understand what the RQ-10 is, we need to understand why it was made. In the days following the terror attacks of September 11, 2001, the U.S. found itself rapidly shifting back to a wartime footing, marshaling its forces for a military response that would ultimately span decades. But as Uncle Sam's gun clubs geared up for a fight, decision-makers at the Pentagon found themselves staring down the barrel of an SR-71-sized problem. Despite America's sprawling satellite infrastructure, there simply weren't enough satellites with the right kinds of capabilities to provide military planners with the levels of intelligence they needed to bring America's military power to bear. The United States needed a serious influx of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities to cover the sprawling expanses of not one, but two Middle Eastern battlefields. And at the time, there were no platforms in service that could do the job quite like the Blackbird. By September 13th, just 2 days after the 9/11 attacks, the Pentagon had already drafted a $45 million plan to bring the Blackbird back out of retirement for the second time, aiming to use the aircraft to collect timely intelligence on terror targets throughout the Middle East, while also providing what Air Force General Bob Baylor once told us was called Blackbird diplomacy, namely shaking the windows of potential adversaries with well-timed sonic booms as a reminder of the ever-present deterrent that is American air power. This proposal, however, lacked the political support it needed to manifest, and instead, America's defense apparatus began funneling billions of dollars into the maturation of existing ISR platforms and technologies, and more importantly, into the development of entirely new ones. 2 months after the attacks, Northrop Grumman's high-flying RQ-4 Global Hawk entered service. The MQ-1 Predator and its successor, the MQ-9 Reaper, quickly gained popularity and attracted new investments. A plethora of smaller unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, soon followed, including the RQ-11 Raven, which entered service in 2003, and the RQ-2 Puma, which did the same in 2007. These platforms provided the ISR foundation on which the global war on terror was built, gradually reshaping the way American forces could leverage timely intelligence in the fight. Gone were the days of A2s and SAR-71 taking pictures on mile-long rolls of film to be developed over days. These unmanned aircraft could relay real-time live video feeds to commanders and even Washington-based decision-makers. This revolution in intelligence and target acquisition quickly began to snowball as more commanders came to understand the capabilities and the value these ISR platforms could provide. Before long, the U.S. found itself unable to field enough modern ISR aircraft to meet these growing needs, and this is a problem that persists to this very day. I'm going to quote Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Evans from the Army's Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Task Force. There's what I'll describe as an insatiable demand for airborne ISR collection capability across all the combatant commands. We hear from them on a weekly basis about needing more, and the Joint Staff being unable to provide more due to capacity limitations. But all of America's investment into new ISR aircraft meant to meet this demand came with a massive flaw. In the interest of keeping costs down, they were purpose-built for the permissive airspaces of the global war on terror. While the MQ-1 service ceiling of 25,000 feet meant occasionally it might run across a shoulder-fired weapon like a MAMBAD, the weather posed the greatest threat to the majority of these aircraft during operational flights, which meant that most of the new ISR aircraft that the U.S. military fielded lacked the stealth or performance needed to survive in contested airspace. However, not all new ISR platforms were quite so blind. In the early 2000s, Lockheed Martin started developing a stealthy flying wing drone that could provide ISR coverage inside the contested airspace of nations like Iran. Building on earlier efforts like the RQ-3 Dark Star and the PAT, this covered drone had a wingspan of roughly 65 f/7 in, making it somewhat wider than the A-10 Warthog. The aircraft was first observed by the general public while operating out of Kahar, Afghanistan, earning it the title. The Air Force would subsequently reveal that, despite its unofficial moniker Beast of Kahar, the aircraft's actual designation was RQ-1 170, and it was flown by the 30th Reconnaissance Squadron at the Tampa Test Range in Nevada and the Air Combat Command's 432 WI Wing at Cree Air Force Base in Nevada. Thanks for watching. Kindly like and subscribe for more videos. In the comments section of the post, please tell me how many you discovered.